Welcome to Ohioans Against Extremism podcast.
Oh my God, that was beautiful.
I've been training for that my whole life.
All right, we'll start and then we'll just decide how much of this gab we want to put in it. Ainsley is not with us today, so...
She's still alive.
She's still alive. Rest in peace. She's actually right there. Ainsley called me and she said, so what if I wasn't on camera today? So we are rerouting, and it's just going to be me and my friend / producer, Taria Palmer.
Hey, everybody.
Taria, who are you? Introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself.
Tell you, so I guess related to this, I have my own podcast, which is Columbus Can't Wait. We created it in 2020, just because we thought that the city of Columbus needed something that focused more on local politics. And we've been doing it ever since, and it's really like a learning journey. I think we've grown to have people across the age spectrum, but it's really like folks like, I think millennials and Gen Z, just trying to understand how government should work, how it actually works, how it should work. We also focus on community a lot. So like what's happening in the community, what are people doing? We have organizers on. And it's really like a Black show. I tell everybody, regardless of who watches the show, like this show was created from, while we don't have like a monolithic perspective, like the perspectives on here are very much like rooted in how Black folks are experiencing the city. So, everybody else is an invited guest to watch, and I appreciate everyone who watches it. But that's the perspectives that you're gonna experience.
So you said 2020. Did you start it during the pandemic?
Yes, we started it. Maybe it was 2021. It was either 2020 or 2021. But we started it I feel like it was a couple months after. So that would have been 2020. I feel like it was a couple months after the uprisings. I think it was like August we started the show. And we started it just like in the sunroom in the back of my house. And it was myself and Malcolm. He's the other co-founder of the show. And we just did it because, like I said, we just thought that there needed to be there was just things that weren't like getting reported on.
Yeah.
And, like we thought should have been part of the conversation. And that was also like, there was some reporting going on about like the police violence and stuff happening in Columbus. I won't say that there was nothing, but it was always like from a skewed perspective. And so that was kind of the catalyst for starting the show. And
how's it been received? I mean, you've been doing it for 5 years now, so.
It's been received really well. I mean, we have an organic follower base. Like I think Malcolm and I had both decided that we didn't want the show to be based off of like sensationalism.
Yeah.
Or like putting out, misinformation to get like more followers or get more people to watch it. I think it just came from a really genuine place. So we've grown just our little organic listener base, and I think it's been really well received. I used to say all the time, like, be careful what you ask for. Because I used to say all the time, like, I want elected officials to be like calling us. And like us not having to reach out to them and have them not like respond back. And now like that happens all the time. I mean, we've had like a lot of people that are, Columbus electeds that have come on the show. We haven't had Mayor Ginther yet.
Mayor Ginther, you should go on Columbus.
I don't think Mayor Ginther really does interviews like that, but hey, the seat's open. But we've had a lot of electeds come on. We've covered a lot of elections. And honestly, that wasn't even necessarily our original intent. Like it was, we did have some electeds on in the beginning, but that wasn't like our full intent. But because there's been so much election activity, it feels like that's been mostly like our shows lately. But we're going to definitely get back to doing more like organizer stuff, more, people have so many like cool things that they're doing just in community that I think everything kind of involves politics in some way. And so like, I also want us to get back to doing more shows like that.
I also love the organic development of that. Like, you experienced this pivotal moment in history. You guys were like, we're not hearing a perspective, so we're going to start saying that perspective. And you had the persistence to do that for a few years. And now you have elected officials that are calling you. And like, that's a perfect example of just like doing something because you think it needs to be done.
Yeah.
And hoping, it actually ends up being influential. And then it is.
Yeah. It really has genuinely been like, I think I would say a wild ride. Cause again, like you understand politics from the outside. And then when you see how messy some of it is on the inside, it's like, oh man, like I didn't sign up for all of this. In terms of just like people are affected by what elected officials do and they feel very emotional about it and like they should. But I definitely have experienced getting some of that blowback too, that people are just emotional about what a particular person has come on and said or done. And it's like, that was the part I think that I was a little, I wouldn't say naive about, but when these election cycles happen, you hear from people and it's not always so nice.
I mean, what are, talk more about that. What are some of the other things that...
Some of the other things that I've experienced, getting nasty comments from people, emails, stuff like that, or people not understanding kind of, I think, what the purpose of Columbus Can't Wait is. Like, I think people also think that, like, I'm an expert. I think I know a lot, but I also think that, like, I can't know every single thing that has happened just because I'm only one person.
Right.
I also think that, like, people, because they see the quality of the show, they think we have this big production behind us. And I'm like, baby, no, it's me and another person. Like, we are holding this thing together by toothpaste, like something sticky, gum, I don't know. Like, it's not, and I'm not doing it for, like, I think the other thing that when people see you, I think that people have a negative view of politicians, both deservedly, and some of them don't deserve it. But they think that, like, you're getting involved because of you're getting some money or some kickback, or it's like really lucrative for you or whatever. And it's like, no, this is literally because we saw a need in the community. And this is like very grassroots, even if it doesn't look that way. Like, I don't have 50 people behind me, putting on this show. I don't have I'm the makeup artist. You know what I mean? Like, it's so I think some people see that and they think that it's this really like sophisticated operation, and it's like, no, this really is like along with all the other grassroots stuff you see happening out in the community, like this too, is grassroots.
That resonates a lot with me because, like, I remember when I was at Equality Ohio, it's an organization that's been around for, at this point, like 20 years. And so people think it's big. People think it has, like, our policy team was a 1.5 people, and so it was like, and we cover the whole state, right? So it's like, so everyone would be like, well, like, why haven't you guys done it? It's like, because I need to sleep sometimes, and like, and there's only so many hours in the day. And, same thing here, like, that is still way more established than Ohioans Against Extremism. We started that from scratch, and same thing. You're like, people think because you launched that you have, this big money backer, and it's like, no, I too got pissed off. But if there's anybody out there, I would love to develop a big backer. Yeah, it always comes with a little bit of a groveling. I'm happy to.
But also, like, that part too, right? Like, big money backers, right? It's like, so much to say about that. I can't take money. I refuse to take money from everybody. Like, that is just not an option. Because when you take money from the wrong people, then you're beholden to say what they want you to say. And I would rather shut Columbus Can't Wait down.
Right, yeah.
Before.
I have, like, kind of different. Ainsley and I were talking about this the other day. I feel like I have a little bit different feelings about that. Okay. I don't care where people get their money as long as it's not tied to behavior for once they have it. Like, my example is like the Weinstein thing with Clinton, right? So Harvey Weinstein is awful in 100 million different ways. donated to the Clinton campaign. And then when he got caught, everyone was like, Clinton should give the money back. And I was like, why would we give him money? Like, why is the prize for getting in trouble getting his money back? I want to take all of his money.
Yeah.
And then I want to like pass a law so he gets caught more often.
Yeah.
Like, unless it comes with an exchange, I am extremely comfortable taking bad people's money.
And I can understand that perspective because I think that in some ways, like, money can be repaired. But I also think that I think that I have a deep enough, like, from my perspective as a Black woman, my education around how movements get co-opted.
Oh, for sure.
That's the part.
If you're dependent on that money, I think that's,
if I'm dependent on that, then it's one thing for you to give something. It's another thing for me to be
to survive or die based on what you're giving me.
Yes. And so fair. I just don't want our message to be co-opted by any particular group because they feel like, well, we gave you money, so you can't speak on this thing. And then, they pull the rug out from under us. And so that is always like more so. But I understand. And I think that you have a point because, again, I do think that money can be repair and money can be reparations. And some people do owe reparations. Like, if you ask me, should a tobacco company be like funding, some work because they've done so much harm? I think there's an argument that can be made for that.
And it's like, and like you said, if it builds complacency or dependence, like, obviously that comes with its own things. But like the morality of just like cashing a check from someone who sucks is like, well, they gave me money.
I think I have to think more on that and what specific examples. But like, I definitely can see. One of my mentors used to say, "We'll clean the money when we get it." And I'm like, okay, that sounds like money laundering.
Well, and also kind of like, but also like learning from our enemies here a little bit. Like, who's not worried about where their money from? Like, and that's, I think, back to the like, people assume we're bigger than we are. People assume it's a much fairer fight than it is. Like, the group that, Equality Ohio had a person and a half for our policy team. The group that was predominantly on the other side of the table had a 5 to 10 person team just in their policy wing, and also a building next to the state house, and also $20,000 a plate fundraisers twice a year. Like, we are not starting from the same point, and yet we have to enter the same battle. And so it's like, we've got these like rusty spoons, and they've got, like a whole army.
We got a knife and they've got guns.
And it's like, we're doing what we can, you guys. And I think that's made me a lot less judgmental, I think, to some of the leaders and whatever, because it's like, it's just all hard decisions a lot of the times.
Well, and I think like that goes to this whole conversation around like purity, right? Like, I think that in our work, there's a sense of like, you have to be perfect in order to engage in this work. And I think like there has to be a re-examination of like what that means. What does perfection mean? What does accountability look like? Can people change? What views that are so problematic that they just like, how do you hold people accountable for problematic views and like invite them back into community? Are there certain things that are just a hell no? Like, and I think that there are. There are just certain things I think that are just really unacceptable. But I think that there's a whole conversation too now around like, how do we move forward with like a lot of the amount of people that need to be mobilized in order for entire swaths of people to stop being destroyed, or at least hold the line. I think that there's a lot to be said about that as well.
Well, and I think the funny thing about back to kind of the conversation around like political dynamics and how it's sort of different from the real world. I think the thing that constantly bums me out is like the political brain thinks I need to do this in order to win re-election is a fair justification for just about anything. And it's a justification that no one outside of politics gives a flying fuck about. Like, I could not care less whether you win re-election. That is a you goal for you. Like, and the fact that you think that I'm going to care more about, or like be fine with this because your personal like power depends on you folding on this is crazy.
I think you have to be a certain kind of person to be a politician. And I think that the people who get into politics who realize they aren't those kinds of people, they either are swept up and they become that. This idea of like my own personal power is wrapped up in me being like a political or whatever, or they quit because they just can't take. They either don't want to become that or they can't take the pressure. It's not something that I would want to do.
I also kind of judge anyone who thinks the only way to give back to their community is to
be a politician.
Yeah. Like if the politicians that like run for office lose and then disappear for 2 years until they run for something else, it's like, you could do something that
you could be doing all this stuff out here is free. Yeah. Volunteer. Have you heard about that? Like, yes, like I think the same thing. And I think, but I think that some people like it's just like anything else. Like, I think some people are like, this is what I want to do with my life. And I want to be a career politician. And it's hard for me to understand because I've never had those types of like aspirations. But now that I can like see a little bit behind the veil, and I say like a little bit, I can see why, folks, I also can see where people see different like perks for them, right? And the notoriety and things that come along with being a politician. But again, at the end of the day, this is like to me, this is like the highest stakes job that you can have. Mm-hmm. I don't know of one that's outside of being like I know people don't equate being like a surgeon and some shit to being a politician, but like you should.
Right.
You've got lives in your hands.
Right.
So. Yeah.
Well, and going back to, I think, how you responded to such a critical moment, the uprising, by getting more involved, by coming up with a novel way to participate in that. To me, I feel like that's also what this moment requires. Like, what would you tell someone who's maybe where you were in 2020 of like, I feel like something's not getting said. I feel like this thing doesn't exist. Like, where do they go from there?
So I think like for me, I was already like somewhat involved in the background, with some of the organizing work that was happening in Columbus. I was like a mom at the time, like I had a really little baby, and I've been involved in like civil rights work way back to like college. So this is just like, I'm not new to any of like, if you ask people who went to college with me, like my life is very on brand with probably what they would have imagined.
What did you work on in college? Like what?
So we actually brought back the NAACP. Like they were gone when we got back. And like, my political education at the time, I was like, this would be like, I don't think now that would be something that I would necessarily be engaged in, but like, at the time, it made sense for me where I was in my like political journey, and we brought it back. We got accused of like they thought we actually like did this little protest like out on the college green, and we had all black on because we wanted people to know that we were like coming back, and they thought we were getting hazed. Like instead of being like these kids are being political, they were like, oh my God, they're getting hazed, and we were like, we're actually not hazing, being hazed or hazing. Here's the paperwork. So yeah, shout out to OU for that. So I've just been engaged from way back then. And then I became a Delta, which if you know anything about Delta, is like very political. And then I kind of stopped for a little bit, but I was still seeing all this stuff going on. Like before cameras started rolling, we were talking about like Trayvon Martin. And that was when I was like, I got to figure out like what my place in all this is. And then I had my daughter. And so I would just do whatever I could, even if that was just like organizers need dinner or they need somebody to help them understand what it means to fundraise. Like I would just use whatever skills I had or whatever I had to offer to put it out there. And that was kind of how I like, dip my toe in the water. Or I would go just as a concerned citizen to certain things. Like I remember, after my daughter was born, going to something that the police chief had, like not at the time, it was like Kim Jacobs. And I think Tyree King had just gotten shot and killed. And I was like, hey, you need to resign. because she was doing like some kind of round table or whatever. And I was like, I have something to say. Like, all these Black people are being murdered on your watch and you're just like brushing it off. I think you need to find another job. And everyone in the room was like, oh my God. And I mean, like, but what to me, like, where else would this be? This should not be acceptable. So I figured I needed to, like, you know, do something else. But also I worked on campus. I worked at a university and would help like organize the students on campus. So I was already doing stuff. So I guess to answer your question, I think you have to plug in wherever you can, right? What are the things that, like, even the little things that you think mean nothing, but you are good at doing them? That is how you plug in. Like, I bet you, like, IT people or cybersecurity folks are probably like, oh, I have nothing to offer the movement. You have everything to offer the movement. Go to some of these organizers who have organizations and websites and need all that security. Like, everybody has a place, I think. If you're a good cook, you have a place. You know what I mean? If you, like, take care of kids and kids love you, you have a place. Like, you can be providing childcare for folks who do need to go out to, you know, whatever they're engaged in. It doesn't always have to be a protest, but even just meetings to understand what's happening and what needs to happen going forward. Like, those types of things need childcare. You know, people need childcare. So I think everybody has something to offer. But I would say, like, before jumping into, you know, any movement space, like, you really need to do a self-assessment, be willing to listen. You don't know everything. And, like, make sure you got your mind right and can get your politic right. Because also don't go in and be, like, just harmful. You know what I mean? But don't be afraid, I think.
Well,
like, you can hold both of those things.
Assuming you know what happened last meeting. Like, I think that's my thing,
Right.
You know? Like, if it's your first meeting, you actually don't know what we talked about last week. So, like, that's fine. Maybe sit down for a minute and, like, absorb it, you know?
And really be in community with people, right? Like, I think that there's a lot of people who like to get on their keyboard and talk about what they think should happen or what they don't like that whoever did or how they think this should be better. But I don't know you, and I've never seen you.
That's how I feel. I'm like, I know who's giving me feedback that I've actually seen at the meetings, and I know who's giving me feedback that all I see is trolling on the internet. And I'll tell you what, there's only one of those people I take seriously.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's true. If you don't even talk to your neighbors, perhaps you should try doing that first. Like, try getting in community with people, like, in real life.
And see how hard it is.
Yes, because it's not, there are so many, like, there are so many contradictions. There's so much conflict. Like, that if you have never really been engaged in, like, the real, what it means in real life to, like, again, be in community with people and try to, like, work towards something, it is incredibly difficult.
I also think it cannot be overstated how important it is to just keep coming to stuff. Like, you know, I think people go to one protest and then they're like, okay, well, nothing changed, so I guess we're done with that. You know, and it's like, honestly, 95% of organizing is not at those protests. Like, it's planning meetings, it's spreadsheets, it's boring shit. That's
accountants. We need y'all too.
I mean, like, everything. And the thing is like, when I'm deciding who I kind of want to bring in to that work, the first question is, do I trust them to come back? Because I'm not going to hand off an assignment to you if I don't think I'm going to see you again. So it's like, people want work, but it's like, I don't know you and I need to know you in order to trust you to give you this piece of this thing. Once I know you and I trust you and I know that you'll come back, oh my God, I have so much to give you, you know? Like, people don't have the patience to just keep coming to stuff. And, you know, you might start as someone who's just there sitting in, but honestly, come to 3 or 4 meetings and you'll get right in the thick of it.
I had a funny conversation it was a couple weeks ago with Aramis from People's Justice Project. And I was like, it was like something that was a long time ago, like maybe 10 plus years ago. And I was like, oh, I was there. And he was like, oh my gosh, no, you weren't. I'm like, yeah, I was. I was like, I used to come and be quiet because I didn't know what I was talking about. And so I wasn't trying to take up too much space. I would just come and listen and do whatever the thing required. Okay, you're going to give me that clipboard to go get signatures for this thing. Go get them and come back. Like, I wasn't trying to, and I think a lot of people also should do, like, come, orient yourself, like, do not center yourself, like, just come and do the things that are required. And again, build trust, get people to get to know you. Like, because again, I think there's a deep level of trust that, especially that's required in this time, because it's like just pure chaos.
And it's doubly true if you're a member of the majority organizing with members of a minority community. Like when I walk into any space, whether it's, you know, a group of trans people or a group of Black people or a group of a community that I know is having a lot harder of a time than I am, like, one, I expect people to look at me and go, who is this lady and why is she here? Like, that's fine. That's fair. It's totally understandable, you know? So like, if you go and get that look, that doesn't mean you should leave. It just means like, think about why maybe there would be a hesitation to trust you, right? Like maybe that's based on past experiences. And
perhaps,
you know, and so like I always, like, especially in those rooms, I really sit back and do a whole lot of listening. And I think what I have found my best way to become, like, to move from that listener in the corner to actually active participant has really been the thing of focusing what I uniquely know about. Like, I'll go in and the only time I talk is when I'm talking about the, you know, wonky stuff about policy, and it's like, well, no one minds that. Like, I'm, you know, like, I'm not telling people how to feel about it or whatever. I'm a nerd. Let me use my nerdom to everyone's advantage. Like, I'll explain it to people, and then people are glad I'm there because I offered something of value. And then I went back to shutting up and, you know, and like listening to people use that, you know?
Yeah, and I think one thing that I've noticed is, like, I definitely think we need, like, cross-racial, cross-identity solidarity. And I think that, like, one of the conversations that I've continued to see over the last couple, like, months to a year is this idea of, like, it's all about class. And, like, yeah, and it's like, it's about class for sure. Like, we can see, right? These oligarchs are trying to, like, lord over us, and we need to be like, hell no. But you also cannot ignore the other intersections of folks' identities that color how they actually experience the world. And so if you're gonna, for instance, like for me, one of those things is like race. And so you can't just like gloss over, we don't want to talk about the race part. Like, we just need to get straight to class. And I think a lot of people are doing that, specifically white folks. And I think that, like, there needs to be some calling in and some studying about how these things intersect and how folks are experiencing them. Because I think that's one thing that I've noticed.
What would be, I guess, like, what would you say to people that are doing that? Like, what specifically do you think what behavior can they correct, right? Like, so that they're not doing that tomorrow?
I think that, again, I think that there is some, like, being in community with folks. Like, I think there's some things that they can read to help them understand, again, really the intersections of identity and how they, you know, how folks are experiencing the world. I think I had something else I wanted to, like, I wanted to cover, and I lost it. But I think, like, doing those things is really important, and making sure that, like, you are not so stuck on a theory of something that you don't, again, understand how this is actually, like, affecting, you know, a person's real life. And I think some people, the problem is that they've only read books or they've only read theory, and they think that they get it, and they don't fully understand the full picture. And I think, you know, Black folks and people of color, I think, understand this in a unique way. I understand how some of my economic privilege changes how I experience being a Black woman in this world. But I also understand how my class does not circumvent some of the issues that I will experience regardless. And I think that, like, in a lot of ways, I think sometimes white folks don't understand that. They're like, it looks like Black people are doing well. You live next door to me. Like, what you mad about? And it's like, well,
Still got like followed at the grocery store. So.
I just got followed in a grocery store. Yeah. Like, my husband just got followed home, like, by the cops. Or, like, these are these experiences are not unique to me, right? So I think that's an example of how folks don't fully get it and don't fully understand how they can be showing up better as allies. And also, like, the other thing that I've been seeing a lot is like critiques of Black politicians.
Yeah, talk about that.
And Black leaders.
Yeah.
I think everybody deserves a critique, right? As I mentioned, I've gotten emails with plenty of critiques about me. And I was shocked at how, like, I was like, man, I'm good at taking criticism. Like, I don't even want to cry about this. This person just cussed me out. I was like, okay, I'm ready to, like, you know, absorb what you're saying and, like, change based off of the feedback that I've gotten. But I think, like, critiques of Black politicians and Black leaders and other, you know, people of that ilk, like, even if they're people of color, I have seen some anti-Blackness in those critiques. And I think that you can critique Black folks and you can critique if you think they're doing a bad job, or they could be doing better without also making those critiques anti-Black.
What might be an example of something like, I don't know.
I saw a podcast.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'll give you an example. I saw a podcast, and it was about, I think, an elected official in New York, not the mayor. Mm-hmm. It was somebody else. And there was actually another person of color that was critiquing him. And she was like, oh, he's trying to act all gangster and like a bro and all this stuff. But she was talking about him doing a bad job. And basically, like, she felt like he was throwing the Black community under the bus. And those are the words that she used. Mm-hmm. And it was like, you could have said all of that without saying that this man was trying to be a gangster, or I forget the exact words that she used, but they were like words that were dog whistles. And I think that she thought that because she is very much in solidarity, or feels like she's in solidarity with Black people and like our work towards liberation, that her critique was validated. And because she had, you know, she's got this background and has done all this work, I think she thought that she was validated in that critique. But in that critique, you were racist. Mm-hmm. And I think people need to check that. Like, what words am I using about Black people? You know, maybe I don't like this Black woman politician. Peel back the layers to understand maybe why that is. What stuff might be underneath that. And again, I think, like, there are people that had very valid critiques of Kamala Harris, right? But I think that some of those critiques, again, were rooted in something else. And I think everybody has to sit with, you know, what are the expectations that we have of people?
An inconsistent expectation, I think, is the big thing, right?
Yes.
Like the default setting, the presumption that white men are competent, the presumption that Black women aren't. Like that whole, like, you have to prove it. Well, who has to prove what to who and why?
Yeah, and I think that everybody, because not just white folks can be anti-Black. I would even talk to some Black folks who would be like, well, I just don't like her. Well, why? You know, like, peel back what the reasoning might be outside of, like, there's the facts, right? And then there are these these implicit biases that we have, and like, make sure that, and you can never be perfect in this, but like, you have to examine your implicit bias, I guess, is a long way of me saying.
Well, and there's also like, there's no graduating from the racism school. Like, you know,
No.
I mean, like that, I feel like, especially white people, like similar to myself, who are organizing a lot, you know, a lot of like spaces that, you know, do center Black people, whatever, they're like, oh, I'm good. I check, you know, and that's not true. Like, I'm always ready at any point for you or anyone to be like, can you not use that word? Like,
well, yeah, and
you know,
I'll be really specific too. Like, I saw people online calling Tierra Ross a criminal, and I was like, she's a criminal for parking tickets? Is that like, I mean, I guess technically you could say
like,
that's a crime.
What are other politicians doing?
But if you were to look at, right, does that rise to the level of that kind of language, right? Because we also understand how that kind of language can affect, you know, you should understand the historical context of using that kind of language about something like that, right? Because Black people have died for nothing, for things that were you know, supposed crimes but weren't really crimes. And I think that, like, we need to be careful about doing that. I think you can critique Tierra. You can say you think she's not ready. She'll do a bad job. You think she sucks, whatever. Like, you can do all that.
Yeah.
But you don't have to do that. And I've been seeing some of that.
Yeah.
And that's in this work, me sitting in this seat, you know, here in Columbus, that's been tough. Because I've been like, I think we have to get past some of, I don't think that, I heard a quote a couple months ago, Black faces in high places won't save us. And I believe that. I don't cast my vote based off of that. But I also understand, again, how we experience this world and how it looks different for us to do anything. Versus other folks, versus a majority. So I would like people to be more cognizant of their language, and how they're talking to and about people. I enjoyed this because I don't really get, now that it's just me, it's like me asking the questions. I don't really get a lot of, like, you know,
you're welcome to join the crowd whenever. Well, maybe Ainsley will even show up next time.
I hope I showed up well, and well informed or something.
You did.
During this time.
No, I really appreciate it. I think it was a great perspective. I think, again, your own journey of getting involved and staying involved and, you know, leading community, I think is so important, and there's a lot to learn from. And I think that is, like, I feel like I keep saying this over and over again, but I also feel like people keep needing to hear it. And that is, like, the best way to survive what we are going through right now is to do whatever you can to preserve your community and create, like, networks that you can use and relationships that you can build on. I mean, like, when shit gets rough, it becomes going to your neighbor and seeing what you guys can figure out together, you know?
Yeah. So can I turn the question on you?
Sure.
As I mentioned, I am not the expert. I'm going on the learning journey with my listeners, but I think I, like, know enough. I mean, how long do you think that judges, because I feel like judges are the ones holding this shit together. Like, I'm nervous because I feel like they're the only ones holding the line against these, like, executive orders, and then the lawsuits happen, and then they say no. But, like, how long can we? I guess my question to you is, like, how bad is this gonna get? Yeah.
I mean,
and when is he gonna really just start? I know he's already ignored some things, but, like, from your perspective, like, when is it just gonna be flat out like, we're not listening anymore and we're not gonna obey the law? Because these laws looking real shaky. I heard that habeas corpus stuff yesterday about they're trying to, like, suspend that.
I think what I would say is there is a small group of people who now are at the helm of these institutions, and those small group of people don't give a shit about the law. And they've made that very clear. And really, the success of their not caring is going to come down to how many other people enable them to ignore it, right? So, like, when a police officer gets an order from Donald Trump and from their boss, who are they listening to? You know? And so I think it becomes, the institutions are only as strong as the loyalty of the people within those institutions to put that institution over Donald Trump. I think that the legal profession, I've said this for a long time, has suffered from a lack of imagination when it comes to how much our system can break. I think that we have massively failed our country by not taking this legal threat seriously a long time ago. And I have said that directly to the lawyers' faces, that probably had something to do with that. And I don't care, I'll keep saying it because it's true. That being said, their whole identity rides on this legal system, you know? And so I think that there's this element of, now that you know you were wrong about how dangerous he is, what are you going to do about it? And I think right now we are in the what are you going to do about it stage for a whole lot of people in positions of power. I've been pleasantly surprised to, you know, see at least some of them put up a fight. I mean, I think a good example is the colleges. Like at first, everyone folded and everyone's like, cool, you know, and then they started fighting back and then they started winning when they fought back. Same thing with the law firms. They folded and then they started fighting back. And I think, you know, when you put this group in a corner and this group in a corner and this group in a corner, there are 3 different opportunities for them to stay in the corner. There are 3 different opportunities for you to lose credibility because you just lost, you know, all 3 of those fights. So I think right now, like, I have been heartened to see some of the larger institutions keep pushing back against Trump and his merry band of people who ignore the law. You know, like Stephen Miller, if it was up to him, we'd have martial law already.
Right.
And it's clearly not up to him because we don't, you know? And I think that, like, I think the best sort of sample of how much our institutions can survive or break is through this deportation stuff. I think that, you know, they sent people over to El Salvador and then said, oops, sorry, we can't get them back. And the court hasn't accepted that as a good enough reason. That wasn't enough for them to just wipe their hands clean of it. They had, you know, they keep having to justify themselves. They have future deportations that have been paused. I mean, enough people tell you you're full of shit and push back, and that at least slows it down. And I think delay is a reasonable tactic in any facet of any of this right now. I think, you know, appealing things.
You with your lawyer hat on.
Yeah, I mean, it is though. But like, it's like kick the can down the road. My thing that I have really, you know, as far as the rest of us watching this, protect your election infrastructure. So be a poll worker. Volunteer to work the polls. Like, make sure that your board of elections locally and at the state level is not pulling bullshit, you know? Like, try to keep the election framework and infrastructure as solid as you can. And that will be a matter of, like, that's a democracy effort because it takes a bajillion people to conduct an election, you know? So I think, like, make sure these local elections in 2025 go out without a hitch, that our framework works. Make sure that some of these voting rights bills, you know, have the worst chance possible to pass. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. You know, I think that lawyers tend to underestimate the risk. I think it could keep getting really bad. And it gets harder to reverse it every day. So we have no choice but to, like, put up as much resistance today and then tomorrow and then the day after that. Yeah. Because it doesn't get easier.
I think folks with marginalized identities have been saying this too for a long time, that, like, that law that you speak of is actually applied differently depending on who was under the eye of the law, right? Yeah. And that's been the problem the entire time. And it just is unfortunate that we don't listen until it's too late.
And, like, they're definitely doing stuff for shock value. I mean, deporting people is for shock value. Arresting a mayor, they arrested a mayor.
Their whole Instagram page,
is
a lesson in, like, making people think things are happening that are actually not happening, because many of the things that he's tried to do, he can't get them past these lawsuits, right? And positioning him as some kind of, like, king or something. And that they're willing to go this far for the American people because they have a mandate. It's all, this guy's whole thing has been marketing from that raggedy carpet on The Apprentice to the White House and everyone that's positioned around him. And people have really fell for it.
I also tend to think that the more shock and awe things that they're doing, it's actually a sign of weakness. Like, if they were just institutionally, you know, already there, they wouldn't need the news story. They would just be doing it already. Like, they're trying to create a perception. I mean, they arrested a mayor this week. They arrested a judge. Like, it's like they're doing stuff just to scare people out of speaking up. But luckily, so far, it seems to be having almost the opposite effect.
It's just pissing people off more. Yeah. Well, let's roll this tape back in 6 months and see.
I know
where we are.
I know.
Are we still on air?
Well, I will tell you the warning. I was thinking about it the other day. The warning that we did before the 24 election about like, no, you guys, it can get so bad though. Like, I was like, well, I guess that held up.
Might have to roll that one. It aged well. I mean, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I know you were hoping that you were wrong.
That's the other thing is like people think like, oh, well, are you guys going to be smug because you're right? Like, no, I wanted this to not happen.
No.
Like, I very much wanted this to not happen.
Because as you discussed, like, yes, we can like delay, but in the delays, like people are still getting laid off and like, missing, losing their livelihood, right? Or people are being deported and being like taken away from their families and traumatized when they're in these deportation camps, right? Like there are things that no matter like how much the law delays, people are going to be affected long term, like generations behind this mess. And that part is really hard to reconcile because we could have done better.
And I think anyone who's listening to this from a, comfortable, secure position just needs to understand like the less you speak up, the less you are proactive, the more you are picking your own comfort over things like people being able to stay in the country and have like life and safety.
Mm-hmm. And it really is true. Like, I don't think that like ICE agents I don't see this only being a brown problem. You know what I mean? There are plenty of people who are in this country who are Black people. There are plenty of people who were born in this country who are Americans who look like people who are not born in this country. And so when you think about it from, if you're like just a selfish person who's thinking that just, oh, this can't happen to me, like, trust me, it can. So from your selfish perspective, don't just think that, right? Like, don't think that it can't happen to you.
Even if you're only functioning from a place of your own
stuff, right?
Still gotta
like, and we have to acknowledge that there are people out there that are also functioning from that, unless it's like a communal mindset. But like, it can be
most people. I feel like honestly,
yeah. So,
all right.
How can we end this on a positive note?
Well. I don't know.
Is that always necessary?
I don't know. I just hope people feel like they can, leave this and feel like they actually have an idea of what they're going to do next. I think what we talked about at the beginning, figure out what you're good at, figure out what you have time to offer, actually show up to shit, and just like keep staying around. Yeah.
We need help at Columbus Can't Wait if you're listening.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you want to come somewhere and stay, like, we need plenty. I think we're going to need plenty of hands as time goes forward. So, yeah.
And we'll link to your show in the
Please do.
info. So. All right. Well, thank you, Taria, for joining us today. Ainsley, thank you for sub-producing for us. I know it was a very, very stressful gig on that side of the camera.
Fact check us after.
Yeah. Sure. All right. Well, that's it. Thanks for listening. Give us money.
Yes. Give them money. Worthy cause.
Well, thank you for listening to Ohioans Against Extremism podcast. If you want more, you can check us out at ohagainstextremism.org. Follow us on Twitter, No Extremism Ohio. And stay tuned, subscribe, and feel free to donate if your pockets allow it.